Hello again, one and all. It's Oliver here, your guide to running, or rather your introducer to someone who knows a lot more about it than I do, and the podcast I could not run, which I think just about sums it up, because it's a podcast for people who might consider running but think they're too fat or too unfit or too old or too badly designed to do such a thing. And let me just assure you that you are not. So we have got with us, we've got Andrew, my old friend Andrew.
Hello.
How are you, Andrew?
I'm very well, thank
Hello,
you, Oliver. Is it episode 3 already?
Yeah, we covered in episode 1, I was going to say this, what got us started, the motivation. It's very easy for me. It was you. And then we've done easy steps, in other words, getting your shoes on and going outside the door and what happens and how that feels. But now we are into episode 3, and I wanted to call it books, blogs, pods, apps, stats, gadgets, groups, channels, clubs and tips. And you said in your very kind way, well, that's a great idea, Oliver, you're a genius. But how about calling it What's Next? And I said, oh yeah, no, that's a lot better. So we're really going to be talking about the path from literal path from being a runner to what happens next to sustain it, I suppose, really, isn't it? That's the idea of this episode.
Absolutely, yes, yeah, and just keeping going, and in a way, I guess nothing else has to happen. In some ways, you can just keep running. I guess it might just be worth talking a bit about what we did actually. Do you want to? Yeah. Describe what happened with you, but because it's more recent for you, or I can talk about what happened with me.
Well, it was quite interesting actually. So I graduated from Couch to 5K, and I said last time how proud I was that I'd managed to do it following the 9-week pattern, and that you don't have to do that, and you can follow, of course, the 9-week pattern and just be really, really slow, and it's absolutely fine. Most people seem to want to repeat a week where they feel that they haven't got out of it what they wanted to. But the idea is there's no time. There's no time to time limit to get your success. But I did it after 9 weeks and then just carried on. So you're running 3 times a week, and you're running for about 40 minutes, maybe a bit less, and 5K. And I couldn't run anywhere near 5K in, say, 30, 35 minutes. Still can't do a 30-minute 5K. So I was doing a little bit less than that. And then I built up to doing a 5K. And lo and behold, I was a runner. I started 1st of April 2024. I always do a warm-up by not much stretching, but I should do more, and walking for about 2 to 5 minutes before and after. And touch wood, and I'm literally doing that, I haven't had an injury that has stopped me running. I've had the odd twinge, which you can sort of run off. And then I became a runner of 3 times a week. I did 5K. I logged it on Strava. We'll probably be talking about Strava later. I got better. I got interested in running. I talked to you down the pub with our friend Jerry, who's rather a third wheel, because we just talked about running. And I got a bit of a boring. Then I got worse at running and thought, I thought I was going to get better forever. And then I remembered I'm 59, worked through that, realised that every run's a win. And now, for the first time in my life, this is crazy, I have looked forward to exercising. And I can't emphasise what an absolute groundbreaking, earth-shattering, completely non-intuitive thing that is for someone like me. I think your let's say journey was slightly different, wasn't it? And motivation slightly different. It was a few years ago as well, and you started without someone telling you what to do, like I had.
Yes, so I started running back in August 2018, and part of the motivation was to get the children to actually move. I may have said that in another episode. So the idea was that we would go and run, and then they would become intrigued and start to become interested, and then run with us. And actually none of that happened, as it turns out, but Rachel, my wife, and me, we graduated Couch to 5K relatively straightforwardly, just doing a very, very slow run, probably the slowest run it's possible to do while still running. And the levels of suffering were okay actually, and it wasn't too terrible. So we graduated, and then broadly we kept doing the same thing for 3 years through winter, through snow. We ran in the snow, we ran in the ice, in the rain. We had to fit it in around busy jobs. Rachel is a busy lady, as I was at the time. So we just kept on doing that, slowly getting faster, running through COVID, which was an interesting experience. So that was our way to get out of the house, was to go and do our run around the park. And still, we had really no idea what we were doing other than just running. And I think as we sped up, I now know that my heart rate was actually very high, and I would just run with a very high heart rate and then think nothing of it and continue. I did have some injuries along the way, nothing very serious, but I had some glute pain and some calf pain. I strained a calf, and I think that taught me that I could get back to running quicker if I ran on my heels with big bouncy running shoes, because that meant that I didn't need to bounce on my calves. So I actually learnt what some might describe as a bad habit there. It's a controversial subject, foot landing, but I then became a heel runner, running on my heels, and I kept doing that for 3 years or so, up until 2021. Other pains, sort of glute, which is arse pain, frankly, and a bit of thigh pain. I managed to resolve those by using YouTube as a research tool and bucket.
That's the video thing, not a tube of ointment.
Is that right? Yeah.
I think
that's
so.
right.
You've
YouTube.
got all sorts of ointments as well. I'm always amazed at how much equipment, kit, and ointments you have. Yeah. In fact, to a certain extent, Andrew, I think we're two different characters. In that, I think I'm just sort of not thinking about it too much and not researching it too much. Basically, relying on what you tell me and just doing it. And I've never thought of changing my style or having a running regime where I run 1 kilometre really fast and then I do something really slow and stuff. Sure. I'm just sort of getting out and doing it, and then I got better, and then I got worse again, and then I realised that wasn't really important. So I think, anyway, the point I'm trying to make is you can really get into this stuff and talk about gaits and what shoes you should use and training regimes, or you can't, and either's fine. The running is the important thing, right? The getting out there and doing an amount of exercise which gets your heart going and not overdoing it so you injure yourself is the point.
Sure.
And so we probably have two different experiences and two different voices as well. One is the complete amateur, and the other one, you, is someone who can't. You seem to have this ability or this desire to get underneath the skin.
I'm just a serial tinkerer with everything, and including my own body. But maybe that's another video, probably 18 rated, that one.
Engineering my own body. Yeah. We've got to have age verification on that, and so get no listeners. So really strange.
So I'm a serial tinkerer, which includes trying to improve and upgrade my own body, and that's what. So when I was looking for ways to avoid injuries, I then came across strength exercises, and I introduced a simple strength exercise routine 3 times a week. Looks a lot like yoga, core strength, glutes and legs, and that did help a lot with injuries and sort of running performance as well. And then the final thing to mention over these early years was my weight, and I've always struggled with it, and my weight was coming down. But in December 2021, my BMI was still at the high end. It's probably 27, something like that. It come down a bit from plus 30 before 2018. I looked at different diets, and I decided to try just a very well-known one, something called Fast 800, which is an intermittent fasting, and sort of it controls what you eat and also controls when you eat, and that ended up working really well, and that's what got my BMI, my smart BMI, down to 25, which is a healthy weight. I could maybe still lose a little bit just for efficiency, but that was it. So that almost takes us up to my early years of running, which was trying to avoid injuries and trying to get down to a healthy weight. Also helps avoid injuries and also makes you faster.
Well, you talk about virtuous circles quite a lot, and this is really a really clear one, because the other thing about running is you want to get faster, and I was at 100 kilos, which is, or maybe even 102, which is far too much for my sort of body shape. Quite tall, but I'm not beefy in any way. And then so another motivation is to lose weight. So I think I've lost about 10 kilograms, and actually that really hasn't made it easier. Yet I think I need to lose a little bit more before I feel nice and floaty. But the motivation to lose weight was it'll make running easier. Whereas before it's always been, oh, I really should. I'm too fat. I look terrible. And now this running thing has come into my life, and it's like all sorts of other added benefits, such as I want to maybe do some strength training as well, because you keep telling me that cardio is great. But you need to also improve your strength if you want to improve your speed. And then with the caveat that you don't need to. Every run is a win. If you take 40 minutes on the 5K, congratulations. If you do 20 minutes on a 5K, congratulations. You've got that tick, which means that you're looking after your body.
Absolutely.
But there's all sorts of other virtuous circles in terms of good diet, reducing your weight, strengthening other parts of your body, and actually the physical exercise itself improves the strength of your core. I haven't had back problems since I started running. I feel my core is stronger. I feel my arms are stronger because it's a full body workout. So there really is no reason not to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which actually, it brings us to an interesting subject, which is what you want to get out of it. We've talked about this in the pub, but it's interesting. I think everyone has a different motivation, and every motivation is valid, obviously, and also can be satisfied by this thing that we do. What I discovered, or I thought of, is I'd never really appreciated my body. It's not the greatest. It's a bit long and thin with a big fat belly. I've got really skinny limbs. I'm reminded, I don't know if you remember Asterix the Gaul. All the Romans were like sort of had these skinny little limbs and quite wide shoulders, and I feel a bit like that. But now, as I get a little bit older, knocking on 60's door, we'll both be 60 next year. I'm thinking, hang on a minute, this thing is a rather miraculous. I'm sort of getting a bit sort of spiritual, thinking, oh well, winding down the clock, the end is near, won't be around for much longer. And you think the miracle of your body that's been subject to R&D for how many ever billion years it is, it's not that many since Homo sapiens has been around, but certainly since life has been around, and it's come up with this solution to the problem, which was, how do I get something to stand on its hind legs so it can run a bit and be strong enough to support the weight of a big brain, but not to be too strong to be muscle bound. And this is what it's come up with. And it's a machine that works really well. And as I'm running along, I sometimes think I owe it to my body, my lovely, beautiful, slightly defective body, to keep it well. Like I put oil in my car, I put petrol in my car. I need to exercise my body because that's what it's designed for. And without sounding a bit too sort of hippy-dippy, that's one of the motivations as well.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, to think of your body as something which can still be improving past 60, and something which you can improve and not just assume is going to be fine.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It was a bit out of respect to I always saw my body as a third party. And we touched on experimentation. You just said a while ago, you like experimenting, you're tinkering. Your background is engineering. And that's a similar thing as well. When I see my weight go down, or I plot a graph, I plot all sorts of graphs about speed against various factors, such as heart rate, such as temperature. I've got this beautiful plot of my speed against temperature. And of course, anything over about 2022, I absolutely collapse in terms of speed. And it is quite a linear relationship, because I much prefer to be running in the cold. Because you mentioned also running through the winter, running through the summer. And actually, I've run through one winter now. And I didn't find it all that bad, actually. I mean, I come from the north of England, so I'm tough as old boots, as everybody knows. But even at freezing, if you put the right kit on, I didn't find it too bad. In
some ways it's better, isn't it? In some ways it's better because we don't overheat, us big chaps. I mean, for smaller people who don't have the, how should we say, fat jackets,
that's it. It'll be the
easier.
60s, don't they? They might have supported Herman's Hermits, the fat jackets. They were a funny set of lads from Liverpool. We're the fat jackets, all right? We're the fat jackets. Thanks for horn out. I'm sorry, carry on.
Yeah, well, just to say, it isn't that bad running in winter actually, and it's easy to look out of your front window and think it looks awful out there, and actually once you get out there with your running gear, okay, maybe the first 20 seconds feels a bit parky, but it's amazing how things improve and how the outdoors suddenly starts to look attractive, no matter, even if it's raining. I quite like running in the rain. So I found that I got a completely different relationship with the outside, because just not looking outside and thinking it's raining, and I'm not going out. I'm thinking it's raining. Great, it means there'll be a nice cool run.
Yeah, I like the rain as well, and this sort of communing with nature. It sounds so hippie, it's so against my character, but actually you're running along, and if you're not listening to a podcast on music, what are you doing? You're observing the three-dimensional space that you are bobbing up and down through. And I run by a river and I see boats bobbing up and down, and you see wildlife, and you see sort of bits and bobs and bits of debris which had a life and a story, and it's very useful to get your mind thinking about these things, to take away any discomfort that you might be having if you're running particularly fast, and whilst you get into that rhythm, to let your mind wander into some other space, i.e. to be present, if you like, in the moment of the action of what you're doing, I think can be very helpful. I mean, and the other thing is, as I get close to considering retirement, you're already retired, well done, I'm starting to think, what are the things that I like to do? One of them is chat to you and do podcasting and stuff, not just with you, but this one's particularly enjoyable. But I've got my guitar, and I've got traveling with my wife that I want to do, and running is now another one of those things. It's one of those things that I actually look forward to and like being part of, even though sometimes it is difficult. Let's be honest, but the act of running through that difficulty is very rewarding, and life has to be about struggle. There's no way it can't be about struggle, and part of the enjoyment is getting through the struggle rather than as well as the attainment. And I think running is quite a good metaphor for that.
So running.
What about you?
Well, I was just So running for you has transitioned from something which you felt you had to do, or just to stave off impending decrepitude, but now it's transitioning towards a hobby for you.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Which is it's a similar thing. It's a similar thing for me. I started running for health reasons and to try and encourage some immobile children to do something. Only one of those things worked. But once I started running regularly, it does take up some time actually, and then you start to realise that it's something that you're investing your time in. Therefore, it makes sense to know more about it. And for me, it has transitioned into a hobby, and which is why I want to learn more about it. So if I was playing the accordion or something, I'd want to know more about the accordion, for example. So it seems to be a similar thing. So learning more about your hobby and understanding how to improve feels like quite a natural thing. So for me, it's just almost finishing off there. So it's thinking about running as a hobby, and then focusing on what are the things that can actually be improved. So how can you get better, or perhaps not decline if getting older. And it seems to be about strength, it's about weight and diet, it's about cardio, and it's about technique, and it's those sort of things. And if you can work on each of those, you can get a little bit stronger, you can maybe get to a more healthy weight. If you are a healthy weight already, don't get less than that. You can eat better, will give you more energy. You can do cardio, train your body at different heart rates, and you can look at your technique and how you run and what you run with, and see if there's any ways that you can improve. And all of those tiny little micro improvements will all just pay dividends. And it's a fascinating experiment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, you've dove into it and you can't help yourself with your engineering background. And I find the science of it really interesting as well, particularly as the lab rat involved is oneself. And I think that's great. And I know you capture a lot of data as well. But what are the things that you have learned that can help once you sort of get into this and you have questions about how it can improve. I mean, you talk about whether you should run at the same speed or whether varying speed is important. The heart rate you mentioned a lot, and I realise that's really important, particularly when it comes to exercise that can burn fat,
Yeah.
which of course we're all very interested in, running on different days and stuff. What are the key things that you told me already that you would tell someone who's like, hey, God, I'm a runner now, but what is this about pacing myself? What is this about my heart rate? What is it about how often I should run and stuff like that? What are the key things without getting too deep?
Yeah. Well, of those sort of four things we mentioned, there's strength, weight, diet, cardio, and technique. There's cardio, which is your cardiac efficiency, how efficiently your heart is working and being fueled. And I mean, if you look on YouTube about running, I mean, a whole load of YouTube content is all about heart rate training and has been for the past few years. A lot of content there about run slow to run fast and zone 2 running. There's lots of information about that, and that really is just coming back to the basics of what we've already talked about a little bit, which is aerobic fueling system and anaerobic fueling system, and realizing that we do have these two different fueling systems. It's not quite as simple as that. There is some overlap between them, but essentially if you run fast all the time with a very high heart rate, you won't be training your aerobic fat burning system, and if you run very slow with a low heart rate, you won't be training your anaerobic system. And so it makes sense to train at different heart rates to be efficient across the bandwidth of your entire heart rate range, actually. And I got all this, again, I'm not a scientist on this at all, so I'm just repeating what I've learned from some influential books. So there was a book written by a chap called Dr. Phil Maffetone in the 70s and 80s, and he came up with something called the MAF method, which was maximum aerobic function, I think. And his idea was to do just that about the aerobic system. So train the aerobic system to be fat burning, which means if you train your aerobic system, then your aerobic system becomes more broad and you can run for longer burning fat without slipping into anaerobic sugar burning, without wanting to get too complicated about it. And I tried Phil Maffetone's MAF method back in 2022, I think it was, end of 2022, and I found that it focused mostly on slow running with very little fast running, and from further research I think I've learnt that that was really aimed at more elite athletes. So I moved on from the MAF method to another book called 80-20 Running, which is another very famous one, tens of thousands of reviews on Amazon probably, and that talks about 80% of your running should be slow and 20% should be fast, really, and that seems to be the sweet spot. So that's what I adopted back in 2023 or so, and that's really what I'm doing now. And I think, again, all of this, the science of this is not completely settled, and I'm seeing some people are starting to talk about with hobby runners and casual runners who running 3 times a week. That's still probably a casual runner, maybe just starting to slip into hobby running. For casual runners, you probably want to even run a little bit more than 20% fast. But these are details, really. I think. So there's lots of fascinating books to read. The MAF method, 80-20 running. There'll be lots of other ones, zone 2 running, etc. They're all saying the same thing, which is, be aware that you can run at different speeds, which translates to different heart rates, which also maps to different fueling systems. And if you get the right training routine, you can improve your running bandwidth effectively.
And when you say 80-20, does that mean you 1 in 5 of your runs is faster, or does it mean that you within a run do some fast running and slow running, or is it the overall score?
As far as I understand it, it is pretty much time or distance, which are similar things, really. So 80% of your distance or time that you're running should be slow, and 20% should be faster. And inside that 20%, there is a little bit more detail that says that you should run inside the 20%. Some of that should be run at threshold, which is the heart rate that is just cutting in between aerobic and anaerobic, and then the other proportion of that 20% should be higher than that into anaerobic, and that's what seems to be the advice. But I mean, we're not going to give people enough information to sort of do much of this in the podcast, other than just be aware. Be aware that you've got this this idea around most of your running should be fairly slow zone 2 running, as it's called. That the heart rates are generally split up into 5 zones. So zone 1 to 5, zone 2 being a slow exercise zone. So do most of your running in zone 2 if you can, perhaps zone 3 if you're like us and a club runner, and then some of it should be fast as well.
Yeah, and be aware. I mean, don't be too discouraged if you're not in the right zone. So I run in never below zone 4, and I've been running 16 months. And I think that's going to go down, I hope, as I get better. But it's taken ages to even get that low. I got to the stage where I was running almost exclusively in zone 5, and I finished and felt absolutely dreadful. Then realized that that's pointless. So now I still run in zone 4, and still feel very tired, but I don't feel like.
So zone 4 is threshold, yeah. So that's
right. Okay.
That's
the going to ask,
yeah, and zone 3 is tempo, and yeah. So the and these are only going to be visible, obviously, if you're wearing some sort of heart monitoring device, which will track these. But yeah, the idea is that you might want to think about slowing down your running a little bit. And if you Google online people doing the MAF method or zone 2 running, you'll find that there are some frustrations there, because people are having to run very slowly or even walk. So as soon as you get any kind of incline, your running has to get so slow, because your body simply isn't used to running with a low heart rate. Because that's what I did. That's what lots of people do. You just get out there and you run your 5k, and your heart rate, it is up high. And for me, it was up in the 160s, and I thought that was fine. And up to a point, it is fine. But if you want to understand about how you might train your different heart ranges, then what is supposed to happen is as you run slow and you just get your body used to running with a lower heart rate. So if your heart rate jumps up in beyond zone 2 into zone 3, then you stop and you walk, which seems like anathema, because I'm on a run. So how can I, surely it's terrible to walk, and I've gone through all the walking thing because I've just done Couch to 5k. I can't possibly walk. And there's a bit of a stigma with that, but that's what you need to do. Perhaps it's worth trying that. So with one or two of your runs, just try to experiment with seeing what happens when you run slowly with even a shuffle run to just keep your heart rate down. And what is supposed to happen over time is that your speed for a given low heart rate starts to go up. So you may be running, 8-minute kilometers when your heart rate is at 120, and then over the days and weeks your speed starts to go up to 730 to 7 to 630, but your heart rate stays at 125, 130, because your body is becoming more used to fueling itself using the aerobic system, and it becomes more efficient because you're training it. So therefore your speed will start to go up. I mean, full disclosure, I notice a bit of that. Certainly a bit of it, but I then moved on to Matt Fitzgerald 80-20 running book, and started to not do most of my running, almost all of my running slow. I moved into 80% running slow, 20% fast.
It's like any hobby, right? You can go as far as, this is what I love about the running hobby is, right? It's not like, oh, I don't know, I'll think of
Yeah.
snooker or tennis or something, where it's all a bit lame if you're right at the bottom end. The bottom end of tennis, you can't serve very well, and the bottom end of snooker, you can't get a break of more than one ball together, whereas running, you're doing it properly immediately as soon as you start, and then you can get as deep as you can, just as deep as you want, just as you can with any hobby. I think the thing I must realize is that if your heart is going at a rate of 130, you are exercising it. So it doesn't matter whether you're walking
Correct.
slowly,
Yep.
running, sprinting,
Yep.
you are doing the job. And because experimentation means that you've got to, respect the numbers. And so if you're actually running over that, it might be more, counterproductive. I personally find it very difficult to say, right, I'm going to have a walk now, because I feel like you said, I've done the Couch to 5K. I am a runner. I'm not going to walk, but that really negates the point. I mean, if you could see a dial saying how hard your heart is working, you wouldn't think, oh, well, I'm walking or I'm running or whatever I'm doing. You'd think, oh, right, I'm working my heart at that point on the dial. So I'm doing the right thing.
That does sort of segue into another little topic in terms of books that I came across, actually, Oliver. So there's this whole idea of Born to Run and the bouncy running gait of the native Mexicans, the Tarahumara, and how they are running with a floaty sort of bouncy style. And I bumped into a friend of mine in St Albans who was running, and he's an ultra runner, and we got talking, and I said I was looking at Born to Run, and he said, oh, you must have a look at this book called The Lost Art of Running by a chap called Shane Benzie. And so this guy that I was talking to was off to do the Dragon's Back. It's hundreds of miles running across all of Wales, up and down mountains. And I was taking what he said really seriously. This guy is a serious seasoned runner. So anyway, I read that book, and it's a fascinating read. It's similar in some ways to Born to Run. It's less of an outright Indiana Jones style adventure, but it is investigating how native cultural runners run, and how they seem to run very well, the Kenyans and others, and what is it about their running, and it's a complicated subject, but the point was that the key theme seems to be about running with a bounce and using the springs which are built into our body, and the more you can train those springs to work, then you're getting an energy return back of up to 30% of running. So if you're running with a very flat, almost like a fast Marx Brothers walk, it's actually possible to move like that quite quickly, but you're not bouncing, and you're not getting energy return. So despite the fact that it might look like it's a low energy form of motion, and it is to an extent, it's not as energy efficient as using your springs, which nature has given us. So Shane,
when you say your spring, the Achilles tendon is one of them.
Yeah, and
a very unusual tendon, isn't it, for a mammal? Well, for any animal to have.
It's one of the adaptations which humans have, as I understand it, and there are other adaptations that Homo sapiens have, which contributed to us being incredible endurance runners. So Shane Benzie talks about running gait in more detail than anyone might ever want to know, in terms of what is a good way to run and use the springs that we've got, which are the tendons, and our legs and our backs, and even our fascia system. So he talks about something called the fascia system, which is something that I'd never really heard of, which are almost the collagen sheath which surrounds our muscles, and this is apparently its own set of springs, and provides elasticity.
Good Lord.
Yep. And this can be trained as well. So the more you use your springs, the more your fascia system is actually mobile. It can become more elastic, and it can also become more springy and widespread. And apparently it can migrate to different places where it's needed. And apparently the adaptations to improve your fascia system happen quite quickly in around 6 months. So we were talking before I just dove off into this Lost Art of Running book by Shane Benzie. We were talking about energy and how it seems that some people are able to run along at quite a fast speed with a very low heart rate, and some of that might be genetic, but some of it is to do with the springs. So they have learnt how to run on their springs, which means they're getting an energy return, who knows what, but perhaps up to 30%, and that's something that is available to all of us, which means that you're running with less effort, which means your heart rate will be lower for a given speed.
But that's really. I'm so jealous of these bouncy people. But in a sense, not really, because if all of us can get into a mode where we're running at a comfortable heart speed, which means we can theoretically run forever as long as we intake enough food. But in other words, we get into that zone where you're just running and you feel like you could run forever, not in a sort of Forrest Gump kind of way, but in a my body is able to maintain this level of effort indefinitely, right? And that's what we're all aiming to, even if it's an 8-minute kilometre or if it's a 4-minute kilometre, if it's using our springs or it's not using our springs. It's getting our heart at a rate that we feel comfortable, and we could probably go on, like I say, indefinitely, but 5k, 10k, whatever. I haven't got that yet in 16 months. I'm not comfortable at a speed where I think, oh, why, I can carry on after this 5k. I've probably run 7k maximum, but I've never got to that point where occasionally I feel, I could run forever, but that's normally in kilometre 2 as opposed to in kilometre 6. But and I'm working on it, and that I will get to. And the other thing is, I tried springing. I was thinking of Andrew. I'm not obsessed with you, but I think what would Andrew say? Well, a bit of a. Obviously, there's something going on beyond the podcast, and I started bouncing. Bloody awful! So I'm not ready to bounce.
What was awful? What was awful about the bouncing? What was it?
I felt like I was using a lot more energy than if I was shuffling. And so I thought, obviously, like a self-effacing chap would do, I thought, I'm doing it wrong, so I'm going to stop this. But I was thinking of my Achilles tendon, thinking, I don't know, maybe this. I suppose you go on your toes a little bit and boing, 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 and 100 yards later I was shuffling again. So I wonder if you were interested in empowering your springs, should we say, which is probably the name of another book. That's probably not just a case of consciously running on your toes and the balls.
No, well, actually, running on your
more to it than that.
Don't run on your toes, because you end up with black toes and blown out calves. So it's quite a subtle thing, and probably too subtle to give advice in detail, and it varies from person to person. But Shane Benzie talks about thinking of your foot as a tripod, where you've got your toe and your little toe, big toe and little toe, as the top of the triangle, and your heel as the base, and you should land with all of the triangle, but it's emphasizing the front of it, so your heel kisses the ground, so you're not running along on your toes, but you land with emphasizing a slight forefoot gait, is my understanding, with your heel kissing the ground, and then you take off. But when you take off, you are using the energy stored in your calf, your Achilles, all of your legs, and the rest of your body as well, and you're driving with your arm as well. So your arms, as they are moving in opposition to your legs, are also have springs in them. That's the fascia system, and the more you train this, the more springy it gets. So if the first time I tried springy running, I absolutely felt the same thing. I thought, this is much harder work than just running with a flat gait. So what? Yeah. Absolutely, sure. So what the thing to do is just do it for a little bit. So do it for 100 meters, and then stop and go back to a flatter gait. And also, this is where strength exercises really help. So you're going to have to combine this with calf strengthening, because your calves they won't know what's hit them. So if you have a flat run and possibly a heel striking run with bouncy running shoes, and you try to move straight to a bouncy style run, then your calves will probably be injured.
Yeah, it did feel a bit calfy, and it also sort of felt like I was not only running horizontally, but I was wasting energy going vertically. So I was probably bouncing too much.
Yeah.
I had no idea of this.
So that. So again, so much of this is controversial, but some people talk about having a very flat head. If you look at the elite runners, they are gaining a lot of height often, and that comes from their bounce. So what's happening is that the bounce is actually giving them height, but also distance, because it's firing them forward. So your spring from your leg and your opposite arm drive is actually a huge human body spring, which is propelling you upwards and also forwards. So I think I'm right in saying that Shane Benzie says, "Do not be afraid of the height." The height is good, actually.
Yeah, but don't think too much about it. I suppose.
Don't think too much about it.
Let the springs do their thing, and the height will come naturally. Gosh, it sounds a bit advanced, actually. Certainly for me, I think you're in that stage where you're experimenting.
Yes, yeah. Maybe given that this is the subject of this podcast is what to do after you've just finished Couch to 5K. So maybe it's something to be aware of. Something to be aware of that there are other running styles to think about, and one of them is investigating a springy running style, but to be taken on with some care, because we don't want injuries.
Yeah, well, no, I think it's certainly legitimate, because some of the things you don't have to do you don't have to do all this stuff. You can pick and choose. The beauty of it is, and the message we keep coming back to is, just get out there, put your shoes on, and run, and take it easy. Don't be a maniac about it, and have your rest days and stuff. But just do it, and you can. And I keep coming back to the simplicity of just and like you say, when the weather's horrible, it actually isn't that bad once you get out there. It's a different sort of sensual experience. Well, as I predicted, we're not going to get through everything we wanted to do on what's next. We haven't even touched on tech and targets and other things. It's probably just before we close this one off, mentioning the YouTube channel that you put me onto with this fella called, this really interesting guy, funny guy called Martin Lewis. How did you find him?
Mark Lewis. I think Martin Lewis is off Moneybox, isn't he, or something?
Oh yeah, I'm thinking of the Moneybox guy. Yeah, Mark Lewis.
Mark Lewis.
Different Lewis.
Yeah.
God, a completely different beast.
Yeah,
and he is a beast as well.
He is. Yeah. He's a fit guy. So I came across him when I was probably a couple of years into running, and I think I was looking at reviews of Garmin watches, and I think he popped up, and I thought, heard his style, and thought it was quite interesting. And then I ended up watching some of his stuff, and he came up with this brilliant philosophy of be above average, which it just kept coming back to me as just a wonderful idea. So on the basis that being the worst is not a great place to be, and being the best is just incredibly hard work. So actually being above average is a really good place to be. And he has a whole little sort of YouTube summary of this with very funny charts, and he's saying it much better than I am. But it really struck home that that's a good place to be. So with your park run times, if anyone looks at those things, if you can be halfway down the field or slightly better,
God,
that's
wish.
great, or wherever you are is great, because you're one of the ones getting out there, so that's also
that's
great.
what I feel.
But if you have any targets, or if you are target focused, being the best is a tough old place to be. So Mark Lewis's message was be above average, and that's great. And then he has some other amazing videos of him doing ultra running with, I think, almost zero training, and I think he does a 50 miler or even longer up towards Oxford, which is a brilliant watch and very funny. So I saw that.
Yeah, he's great, and he's kind of an alpha male. I think he had a big job in the city or something. Got chubby, loved donuts, was a bit of a fatty alpha male banker type, and then he thought, I don't like this. I don't like this, I don't like my body, I don't like my job, and he sort of changed, and he's sort of like kind of alpha male, but very self-effacing and really sweet, actually. I think he's impressive. Anyway, we don't want to distract people from here, but this is not about us, Andrew, although I think your explanations are absolutely perfect. Actually, funny enough, the one thing I did also think of when I started running was because you got me into it, and because I'm doing it, my wife is now doing it, and she's really annoyingly good at it. it. So she's always winning her park run in their age group. My son's getting into it, and his girlfriend. And part of this is, oh, right, well, let's spread the word. If we can even use this podcast to get, I don't care, 2 or 3 or 4 people, not even of our age or our background or our gender, but just getting running because these 2 blokes started talking about it on a podcast, that would be a massive win for me personally as well.
Yes, yeah, and there are a few people that I've harassed as much as you, and they have gone on to do some running. And there's one of my friends has sent me a WhatsApp message quite recently, just telling me his story and about how he lost nearly 20 kilograms and in 6 months, and was now running 3 10Ks a week, and perhaps we might have him on to talk about how he did that as much faster than me. And he was very appreciative, and I didn't really do anything other than spread the love. And I know how I wasn't feeling so great with no fitness levels and with a BMI of 30 plus, and the journey into running was quite easy, very cheap, and quite straightforward, and the levels of suffering were not that bad.
So you can set them as well. You can calibrate your levels of suffering as well. Actually, once you get going. No, it's been a revelation. I would never have thought of doing it, let alone doing a podcast on it. Look, we're going to carry on with what's next. On the next one, we'll be looking a little bit more about tech, which is another area of your love. I am a little bit as well into that. Some is useful, some isn't useful, and other things about mind, body, attitude, ambition, or lack of it, etc. I'm going to say, I don't think anyone's going to be inviting me on their podcast saying, hey, this is a guy who managed to get his 5K down from 38 minutes to 36 minutes. Oliver, how the hell did you do that? But I don't care. I think I'm more about evangelizing for people who are like me.
Oliver, you are an inspiration by yourself.
That's it. Good. We're definitely going to end on that. Andrew, as always, a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Oliver.
And see you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.
Wow.